Mics are hot. Hello and welcome to the Big Leagues Show. As always, I'm Connor Somerville, joined by Mr. Aiden Silliphant, back after last week's missed episode due to some technical issues on the Spirit Live end. But we're excited to be back. We're just going to really jump into this and introduce our guest for this week, Mr. Hunter Surphlis. Hunter, how are you doing today?
What up, guys? I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show.
No problem, man. We've been trying to get you on for a while, so we've been keeping you in the back of our heads, from the beginning. So we're glad finally to get you on now.
Yeah, we're glad to be on.
Yeah, we try to, with this show, sort of keep people in mind for when certain things happen. So we're just waiting for a tennis thing to happen so we can have Jack Shapiro on. We were going to have Skylar on once the Premier League restarted, but unfortunately that didn't work out. So we'll wait for another Premier League big thing like that to happen to have him on. And we try to keep people in mind. And because you know baseball and because you know basketball and sports apart from soccer, which we don't talk about on this show because Aiden doesn't know soccer, is pretty dead. So we figured let's take a look at MLB and what is happening with the Toronto Raptors, because we touched on that for a few episodes in a row with Therese and I'm blanking on other people's names. How am I forgetting his names?
Joseph we had on.
Joseph. And Seth as well.
Seth.
So we're gonna get a little bit more comedy from, if you remember the Seth episode, because Hunter has also done a little bit of comedy.
Yes, sir.
And we'll touch on that in a little bit. But let's start off with the question that we always ask every single one of our guests to begin the shows. And that is, what is your first memory of sports? And what is your first memory of sport media?
Oh man, those are some good questions. My first memory of sports that I can think of, and this is probably like, I don't actually remember it, but since like my mom told me this story recently, it's like in my head. So one year when I was, I can't even remember how old I was, but I was really young, and my mom for my birthday ended up getting me like Leafs tickets or something, because I was a really big Leafs fan at the time, and she like tricked me pretending we were like going out for dinner, and then we ended up at the ACC, I guess like now Scotiabank Arena, but like ended up at the ACC. And it wasn't like my very first game that I'd ever been to, but it was definitely the first game that I ever like actually remember being at and like understanding like what the hell was actually going on and like why everything was so cool. And I think a big reason of that is, I just got told the story recently, so it's easy to remember, or at least think I remembered it. And B, like it was kind of a surprise. It was a birthday. It was something that like me and my mom did together. So like that's my first sports memory. And then sport media, honestly, just like waking up in the morning and watching like Sports Center or like any of the various shows that were going on in the morning, just talking about and recapping the night before sports, and like literally every single morning before going to school, like until I was in like grade 6 or 7, or I probably even like grade 12. I have no idea. Like I would just like religiously go there, wouldn't even care about breakfast. Like I'd have to like be pulled away from the TV to brush my teeth and shower and all that stuff, just because I wanted to watch like Jay and Dan say some stupid stuff about baseball or something.
Yeah, even nowadays, right? Like everybody's still watching Jay and Dan. Like I work at a hockey store, but we have Jay and Dan on all the time. In the mornings, like for my shift, like we put that on. So yeah, I mean, Jay and Dan's like addicting. Like if you start watching it at a young age, like it carries throughout your entire life. Like I'm sure we're gonna be like 30, 40 years old, we're still gonna love Jay and Dan.
Yeah, like I've like become less of a fan of them. Like after they went to like NBC or something,
They went to
right?
Fox,
in the States.
I think, yeah.
Fox, yeah. So for a little bit, and it was like since coming back, I haven't been a fan of them as much, but like I'll still find myself like they're the first station I go to in the morning, like just to check on things. And I'm like, I can't really watch this that long, but it's always just instinct to go to them.
That was actually going to be my follow-up question: is which Jay and Dan do you prefer, the old ones or the new ones?
Oh, definitely the old ones.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah,
it's so much less scripted, and less sponsor heavy. It was a lot more natural back then. But obviously, I think Jay and Dan plays a large part in a lot of people's childhoods, I guess, as an introduction to sport media, because their content was so easy to consume. But what would you say was your first introduction to sport media as a potential career for you, and sport media as a potential program for you to go into?
So I actually did a year at Laurier, like right after high school, and I went there for a program called communications. Like it just like total like BS, like nothing to do with anything. Like it's just a course that you go to just to like get out of your home and like kind of live on a campus somewhere, right? So like that's kind of that wasn't necessarily my intention, but that's what it turned into be. And I had a bunch of really good roommates actually in my like at Laurier in my apartment and residence. So we we were just kind of like yapping away, and we were talking about how we weren't really liking our program, and they helped me out and like kind of like figure out what I wanted to do in life, I guess. It sounds kind of corny, but like yeah, they helped me out and like we realized all together kind of that like passion was like sports and storytelling and all this. And so then I took a year off. Took a year off from Laurier, but still lived in Waterloo with those same roommates, and we just kind of were hanging out and we were just like consuming sports content together. And eventually we like ended up coming with the like as every like I swear every like white dude who likes sports, like, man, we should do a podcast. So like that kind of came to mind, and then as I was like putting together the pieces of doing it, I found out that there was actually like a sport media program, and I had no idea. And it was like 1 week before applications were due or something, or like a couple days. So I was like really like greasing it out, like had to put together my portfolio in like, I don't know, like 2 days or something, which was kind of ridiculous. And then eventually like things worked out, and I didn't ever really think about it until I got into the program, to be honest. Like I thought doing the podcast would just be something fun to keep my mind off of school and like keep my mind off of like stressing about what I'm going to do next in life. So I never thought of it as a career until I actually got into the program. And like even then I was still, oh man, this is just a program, like maybe I'm going to be in marketing or something, or I'm going to do this. But as the years have gone by, I'm like, yeah, I think I could do some live productions or something like that.
That's great. Did you hear that Luke kind of has like a similar path to that as well? Because we had Luke on last week, and he went to Laurier, and he was in communications as well before he came to Ryerson. I don't know if you knew that.
No way, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But then he didn't take a year off in between. He did Laurier communications, I guess, during the year that you took off, and then he applied to Ryerson. So that's pretty cool how 2 weeks in a row we've had two people crazy that have gone to the communications program. So how was the application process like for you then, having like what you said 10 days to apply to the program? Like that must have been a pretty hectic, week and a bit.
Yeah, it was wild because like I was pretty set on where I was applying, like a lot of like like those classic, the Brock sport management, Humber sport management, then like a couple. I do photography, so like a couple photography places, and so I was like set on those. I had like got early acceptance for a couple of them already, like before applications even ended. So I was like, okay, this is unreal. Like I don't even really need to think about it. And then my mom texted me and was like, yeah, go check out the thing. Like, make sure you know exactly where you're applying and like what you're applying for, all this. And I was like, chill out. Like, I know it. Like, I know where I'm going already. I'm doing this. And then, yeah, once I found out, I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I realized there was a bunch of application or a bunch of stuff you had to put together for the application and kind of make your own portfolio and write a bit of an essay and do this and that. So it was super stressful. But like in the end, I realized that it made me want to get into the program that much more because you actually worked really, really hard for it. And then I got the interview and I was like, okay, well, I have to kill this, because then if I don't kill it, then I'd like totally screwed up like 3 days of my life putting together this application and working really hard on it and like being super stressed out about it. So Yeah, it was very stressful, like the few days that I put into applying and stuff, but it was really worth it because I mean, you the program that we're in, like it's deceptively a lot of work, and I think that was a really good like primer to set up for this. Like it wasn't actually a lot of work for the application, but relative to what I was applying for beforehand, I was like, oh my god, this is so stupid. I can't have to do this just to get into university. And then I guess it worked out.
Clearly, because you somehow, or I guess you did get here pretty. I think you could use this word somehow because you put everything together, including the, what do they call it? Recommendations, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
3 letters of recommendation in the span of 3 days. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was wild. It was wild getting everything together, man.
So you mentioned the interview. Who interviewed you, and do you remember what day it was?
I don't remember the day, but I do. It was Joe Recupero. So like I got the program director, which was like kind of once I found out that because we had to do the written part first, and then you did the interview, I think. And
Yeah.
and they're like, they're like telling people about the interview. People were asking questions, and they're like, oh yeah, if you get Joe, he's the program director, so make sure you make a really good impression. I was like, oh my god, like I've got this narc coming in interviewing me, like he's gonna be so hard on me, like he's gonna just totally rip me apart. But yeah, like it was good. It was really fun. He talks a lot, so like that was it was easy for me to like not say something wrong because he would say something, ask a question, then I'd be like, yeah, and then like kind of piggyback off his point, which was nice.
That's cool.
So
I actually had Joe as well for the interview, so I can kind of relate to that. It definitely turned into more of a conversation.
Yeah, and that was good. Like at all the things that I was nervous about going into it kind of went away because it was like a conversation, right? Like it actually seemed like he genuinely cared, and he wasn't like this jerk who wanted to just like weed out the bad applicants. He like genuinely wanted people to get the most, like not even just out of the program as a whole, but like get the most out of the interview with him and like how to come back next year if you didn't get it and then eventually get in. Like which I thought was very like it was very calming for me.
So what could you talk a bit more about the sort of gap between high school and applying to Ryerson? Because you mentioned you did a year at Laurier, you did a year off as well. So that means you are, I guess, technically, are you 2 years older than Aiden and I?
Yeah. So I'm a 98. Mentally, I'm like a 2006, but yeah. So
we must be 2008 then.
That could be right. Yeah. No. Like honestly, that year at Laurier was like as much as I didn't like school and classes and stuff like that, and like frankly I didn't do very well in the classes that I didn't like, which was most of them, which was like another reason why I didn't want to go back. So I was like, I don't want to be mediocre at what I'm doing. But it was honestly like a little bit that time off and then like the taking the year off and then living with people who were in university and like doing relatively well. Like it was honestly pretty discouraging to do it, but I also think that made me like work even harder to like get to where I eventually wanted to be and like eventually to where I am now. So all I was doing really was like when I was in school, I was going to classes sometimes, going to the gym and like partying, and then in my year off, I was just like working. I found some like bogus job at the mall in Waterloo, worked there like 5-6 times a week, went to the gym and just like hung out with the boys in our apartment. And then eventually I was like, okay, I kind of actually need to get my stuff together and start applying and figuring this stuff out. And then like reality kind of hit as soon as I ended up, having to see how much stuff I really needed to do to get into Ryerson.
It's interesting to hear how you adapted post high school and how you found this program. I guess, could you call it last minute in terms of?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
So you hadn't heard at all about the program until like 10 days before the applications were due. Is that correct?
Yeah, dude, I had like no idea that there was even anything called like I didn't even really know what sport media meant, to be honest. Like, and then I was looking through stuff, and I think I like Google searched something just in case I wanted to see like what other sport related programs I could look at getting into, and like if there's anything super exciting. And there's this one, I forget what it's called, but it's in whatever universities in Sudbury. But it's like the Brock course, but more like analytic driven. So I was looking at that one, and I ended up not having like the proper high school courses to get in there. And then within like the same article of where I like found that, it ended up having like, oh, Ryerson Sport Media, this person went here, this person went here, this person is like a head here. And I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of dope. And then, yeah, like I found out that it was a program and applied, and then looked through the program stuff and figured that it was something I might want to do. And I didn't even know what it was until the interview, really.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Just kind of like shot my shot, like slid in the DMs and it worked.
Yeah, it definitely worked out. So yeah, the interview went well, like you said it did. After the interview, how was your confidence level? Were you confident that you got in? Did Joe say anything specific that made you more confident or not?
Yeah, I was confident after it. Like I think the time allotted for the interview was like half hour or like even 15 minutes. I can't really remember what it was. And Joe and I actually like ended up talking for like 45 minutes, which I really felt bad. I felt really bad about, because like the person behind me was probably like, man, what are these guys doing? But yeah, so we were, it felt like it was good. It was a good conversation. Like Joe kind of mentioned like, at the end of the interview, he was like, yeah, like I'm definitely going to, you're basically accepted, is kind of what he said. But then like I was hearing people that I'd met at the interview like, oh yeah, I got my thing back already, I'm in, I got this, I'm in.
Really?
And it was like, yeah, and it was really, really late, and I'd gotten all my acceptances from everywhere else, and I was like, dude, I didn't get in. Like I must be the last person to have gotten in. And then like a couple weeks before they said that things were going to be like, they were going to stop sending them, I ended up getting it. So maybe I wasn't as good as I thought, and I was like on the back burner, and some people declined, but I like to think that I was, the number one choice.
Do you remember when you got in?
It was late, man. It was very like, it was late. I want to say like April or May or something. Like, yeah, it was pretty deep into the year. I was getting very worried.
I'm trying to remember when I got in. I'm not good with dates. I'm happy that someone actually didn't remember the day that they got interviewed, because in previous episodes everybody has said it like right away. Yeah, I got interviewed on January this, March this.
No way. People remember that?
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I remember when I don't remember the exact date, but it was the day before. Yeah, it was the day before March break. It was that afternoon.
Okay, here. I have the date that I got in.
Wait, I got in late too. I got in May 4th.
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, I got mine like May 26th.
Wow.
So I was deep, man. Yeah, I was deep. I literally thought I didn't get in, but I just I got this email and it says like the subject is congratulations on May 26th. Wow. So I think that's the date that I got in. That would make sense, but
that's because I think they have to send out all offers by June 1st. So that's insane. 4 days. Is it 30 or 31 days in May?
No,
4 or 5 days. One of the
31.
two. Okay, either way, 4 or 5 days before the deadline. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was greasy, man. I was very these guys, I thought like this Joe guy just like scummed me and said it to everybody. He's like, yeah, man, you're definitely going to get in, and then just like put me out to dry. But
so I guess what was because you said you didn't really know too much about the program at all. What was your maybe first wow moment about the program? Was it like visiting at the MAC? Was it going to the RCC, looking at the equipment there? Like, what was it for you?
Yeah, I actually never visited Ryerson. Like my first day on campus, like my first class was the first time I'd ever been on Ryerson campus. So like I I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. Like nothing wowed me going into it. I just kind of knew that they had a studio above where like the Leafs used to play, and I was like, oh, that's dope. That's super cool. But yeah, I would say probably like that audio, whatever that intro to audio production, whatever that class was kind of like my first wow, like this is actually legit. Because I think the first class we did like a tour of the Allen Slate and tested all these mics and tested all this stuff, and they showed us how to use certain things and whatnot. And I was like so out of my league. Like I had no idea what any of this stuff really was. And that was kind of where I was like, man, this is legit.
So how have you found your experience at Ryerson then, coming in very blind from the sounds of it?
I'm honestly I'm liking it a lot, and I feel like despite being a couple years older, like I feel like fitting in hasn't been an issue, and I think that's like one of the most important parts about university is like not necessarily fitting in, but like having fun and not necessarily taking the school aspect of it too seriously. And I know like sometimes I do take everything a little bit too seriously, and I do all my readings and I do this and that, and sometimes it's not the best. But yeah, like I've loved it, and I think the fact that especially in our program and even in other programs, you get people who are in industries that you want to work in or that you want to kind of get experience in has been like the most helpful thing for me. It's not just some guy who got a PhD in whatever teaching you this. It's actually, we have business profs who are actually like they've made a lot of money and they've done businesses, they've sold businesses, they've consulted for businesses, or we've got production people who are producers right now, like right this second, on various things, whether it's like Hockey Night Canada, CBC, Sportsnet, TSN, whatever. And like we have all that at our disposal. Has been like the best for me, because you can learn this type of stuff kind of anywhere. You know what I mean? Like if you get a camera and you get a microphone, like eventually you're going to figure it out, and eventually you're going to be able to Google something here and there and learn this stuff on your own. But actually having these guys, and like guys like Ryan Sykes, for example, like who are there and are willing and will help you, like I think has been the best part about the actual school for me, because you can learn and you can be the best that you can be with the minimal learning stuff that they give you in terms of like textbook and like little things here and there, little tips. But like having those actual like experts and people who have been doing it for years and years and years is the coolest thing to me.
Yeah, and if you get Ryan Sykes, he is one of the best people you'll ever meet, and
yeah.
He knows his stuff better than anybody else. The fact that he doesn't work in the industry shocks me personally, but I think he likes what he does here, so, and that shows. But have you figured out where what you want to do in the industry then, from Ryerson?
Not particularly, but I do have like little things that I do think I want to lean towards, but I haven't fully figured it out yet. Like obviously a goal of like a lot of people in the program starting out is being on air, and I think that was obviously a goal kind of heading into this. But now that I actually see how things work and have seen that like there is a little bit of skill there on my end, that would kind of be a thing that I'd be interested in. But I also like the idea of producing or like doing any sort of thing to like putting a show together. I find very intriguing. So anything like that is kind of where I'm fitting, but it also changes every year. And like with certain courses, I'm like, oh, I want to be a writer, or I want to be on air, or I want to do this or that. So I'm sure by the time I graduate and actually do get a job, my thoughts will change again and again and again. But for right now, yeah, it's like on air or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good thing about this program is it gives you time to figure out exactly what you want to do. And you're in third year and you're still not 100% sure,
Yeah.
which I don't think is necessarily uncommon. Having that ability, and that's one things Ryerson teaches you in the sport media program is how to do everything. So you end up pretty well set, hopefully, when you go into the industry. Fingers crossed.
It's going to be challenging no matter what, but I think, Hunter, you mentioned producer and hosting, like you're good at both those things. I think just getting in somewhere and working your way up, like I think that's kind of what everybody's aiming to do right now.
Yeah, of course. It's a big part of everything.
All right, so let's talk about well, we'll ask the one question that we always ask people before we jump into all the other stuff that you've done outside of Ryerson. And that is, what has been your favorite program in sport media or elective?
You mean class?
Yeah. Did I say program? I meant class.
I got what you're saying. Favorite class? I think the obvious answer is going to be the production courses, just because you're actually producing shows, and that's the most fun thing you can do basically in a classroom is like actually create a show that is entertaining to watch. And like legitimately they are entertaining to watch. Like watching other people's shows come together and come to life is like one of the coolest things, and actually then going over and watching them in the Google Drive is dope as well. But I also really like the on-air course with Dan Berlin, as well as the sports journalism course with Dan. And like it is a testimony to the courses and the curriculums themselves, but also just having a guy like Dan with all the experience he's had and all the stuff that he's able to teach us, I think goes beyond just what the course calls for. So I think in terms of like learning wise, I think I've learned the most in those two on-air and sports journalism classes taught by Dan Berlin. But like the most fun has to be the production courses where you're literally just working with people and coming up with show ideas and then eventually putting shows together.
Yeah, those TV labs are definitely hit or miss for people. But the majority of people, I think, really enjoy them. And they like to sort of find niches that you're good at. And you found that I was in your TV production class and your on-air class because you couldn't escape me. And you were a good director, you were a good producer, you were good on air. I don't think you AD'd because I think I did that for all of our shows.
No, I did not AD, and I plan on not doing it.
I don't honestly. It seems hard.
It's not as hard as you think it is. It's just a matter of keeping track of time and doing quick math / paying attention to the clock. If you couldn't tell, it's the one position I can actually kind of do.
You do it damn well, man. You damn well.
You can do host. You can do audio. You can do a bunch of things.
I can do audio.
Why not?
No, I said I can. I can.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. That's what I said.
I can do audio. That just fell off the rails so quickly. But yeah, let's sort of, I guess, move on from Ryerson and talk more about the stuff that you've done outside of Ryerson. And I think we'll stick with, actually, I kind of want to save this, your stuff that you've done with Sportsnet, because I think this is pretty interesting. Let's start with, you mentioned this earlier, you are a bit of a photography guy. You have a photography Instagram, bathing.h.
Yes, sir.
First of all, how did that name happen? And
yeah, so there's a streetwear company. It's called Bathing Ape, and so I kind of like made all of my social medias when I was like, I don't even know, I think it was like grade 10 or 11 or something. I made them all a bathing hunter, and then when I eventually created the photography page, I was like, I'm just gonna kind of work on that and figure out, I don't know, bathing.h sounded okay, and it wasn't even that serious. Like I really just wanted to make it just so that I wasn't like clogging my own Instagram feed with a bunch of pictures that I'd taken and stuff like that, which in retrospect I kind of wish I did, but yeah, just kind of ran on the name that I gave myself in, I don't know, whatever that year was, grade 10 or grade 11, when I first kind of got going on the social medias.
Well, that's now your December job, is moving all of the pictures you have on Bathing Age
Yeah.
over to your main Instagram and having every single person who follows you unfollow you.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Because of the amount of spam that would happen. Because you have taken how many pictures now is on that Instagram?
Dude, I have no idea, but I know that it's like probably like less than a tenth of the pictures that I have on my computer or saved on hard drives and stuff like that. So it's probably above 100, probably like 110 or something like that post. But yeah, like it doesn't even crack the shell of what I have saved. What's coming next, man? Stay tuned.
Yeah, there's big stuff in the works.
No, not really. But I just always forget to post them. So I just have a bunch of stuff on my computer with funny names, and it is what it is.
So
I just looked it up.
So how did you get into like the photography side, and have you taken any photography courses at Ryerson so far?
No, I haven't taken any photography courses. And like how I got into photography, I just like I don't know, in high school, I just kind of, when I would go out, I would always bring my like, I got a camera for Christmas or something, and every time I would leave the house, basically I would take my camera with me for, I don't know, probably 6 years straight. I didn't leave the house without the camera, whether it was school or going to a party or going to just like a friend's house or literally just going to the corner store. And like then I just like fell in love with it and always had my camera with me, always had my battery with me, I always had something with me to take pictures. And then yeah, like just got into it. Then I started to get into like fashion a little bit. So I started doing some stuff with my cousin's girlfriend at the time, now his wife. So she kind of started her own like fashion blog that got pretty big in Toronto like social spaces, and ended up starting a company for herself, and that also ended up getting big. And so I did some stuff with them, and then I realized that I actually kind of just like doing my own thing more, and I didn't want it to be so like staged and so prepared. So I kind of fell out of love with it, but it's coming back now as I'm stuck in quarantine, not really being able to do anything but go for walks and bring my camera with me.
Nice. I looked up your Instagram and how many posts you have, and you were very close. You have 114.
Oh man,
on that Instagram.
I know my posting very well, I guess.
Or you got incredibly lucky with a guest, but
that's probably more like it.
We'll go with the first one.
You'd have to post them all onto your stories and then save them as highlights on your main account. You could do that.
Yeah.
It's not that serious.
It's a hobby, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably the best way of looking at it. But let's sort of talk about some of the other stuff you've done in the industry. I guess we could quickly talk about your Medium page, because you have one of those. 7 articles on there. 5 of them were published in Life in Repeat. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, so when I was I started my own like Raptors centric blog when I was in my year off at Laurier. So, well, when I was in Waterloo, so I made a blog there that was all Raptors stuff. And as we kind of got bigger in the community of like the Raptors social media stuff and like Raptors Twitter and all that, we had, me and my buddies ended up meeting a couple cool guys who had their own little blogs and their own things. And the Life in Repeat is just one of those guys, Peter K, who on Twitter is Life in Repeat. He's like one of the funniest guys you can follow on Twitter for basketball stuff. He's not as active right now because the NBA season's not on, but he does a good job talking about that. And he has his Medium page, and so every now and then he'd hit me up and say, "Hey man, can you put together an article or put together a piece of something so that we can post it as this like kind of segment, this big series of things from a bunch of different Raptors people. So that's kind of just how it came about going on to Medium. I didn't even know what Medium was until Peter K hit me up and was like, man, do you want to write this for me? And so I did.
And was that a similar situation as to what you did with Take Six?
Yeah. So Take Six was the blog that I created in the podcast. So that was all me, and that was just kind of what came out of it. Like I just met the guy who ran Life and Repeat, and he like just through like Raptors Twitter stuff. So that was the start of that.
So wait, is Take Six the podcast that you started at Laurier?
Yeah. Take Six is the one that I started in my year off, and then really got into it as kind of, I think, for a couple of years, and then Fansided reached out for Raptors Rapture content, so I kind of left my Take Six thing on the back burner. I still pay for the website and all that stuff, which is kind of annoying, but like you never know when that's going to be needed again, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So Fansided reached out to you then to work for Raptors Rapture?
Like the editor did. So at the time, I had the editor on, Mike Bossetti, a couple times, and he hit me up, was like, hey man, we had a podcast. We like your articles and stuff. Like, I think you should consider doing this. Like, I obviously, like, you get paid for it at Fansided, and I wasn't getting paid a lot. I just kind of broken through the paywall of Take Six, and like had been getting a little bit of ad interest here and there. So like that was kind of cool on my own, but I wanted something a little bit more like consistent, and that's what they offered me. So I could actually see it as something where I could, have money come through from this podcast or from this article that I wrote, and I could buy like a 6-pack with it rather than, a bag of Skittles, So like that was kind of my thinking.
Huh. Yeah, so I think it's a pretty common theme among sport media people is writing for Fansided in some sort of capacity. But I haven't heard of anyone being reached out to before. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Do you still write for their website?
I'm still a part of the website. I'm still an author on their page. I just haven't in a while because there were some issues with like payment stuff that I don't want to get into it, but like I said, if I'm going to be creating this content for you guys and like this kind of like evergreen content, it's not just like cookie cutter stuff that you guys have come up with. It's like stuff that I came up with on my own, especially with the podcast. Like I, doing trivia shows and doing stuff like that where I really have to put in a lot of work, and it's not just the, classic recap of the game that happened last night or the classic recap of the season or a certain milestone that was hit. I thought, if I want to do this, I'd rather do it and not get paid doing it for myself rather than doing it and not get paid for someone who is going to be making money on it. So yeah,
it's understandable. You haven't written for them for, I think it was 31 weeks when I looked.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You did the podcast. You've done the podcast relatively recently. So is that still something that you do?
No, not for Fansided. I am not doing that. We actually, like, with the payment issues, it like kind of extended to the podcast. So like, I kind of told them, like, and it happened basically right as like the whole league kind of shut down. So I was doing it for them probably, I think I did like 3 or 4 or 5 episodes or something like that after everything shut down, and the payment issues hadn't been resolved. So I ended up saying, yeah, like, I don't want to do this until we can figure it out, and it hasn't been figured out quite yet. So we're going to see what is going on with like next season, if that happens. And if not, then Take Six will be back, I think. Maybe. I don't want to
It's good that you have something to fall back on. I think that's pretty huge.
Yeah, it's nice. And like, I don't have to fully create this whole new thing again, right? I can just go back to the website and do it. And I already have all the stuff set up for putting it to Spotify and putting it to Apple Podcasts and all that stuff. So like, it'll be hard to grow that following back up again. But it is what it is.
Hey, I'm sure at first, like your first episode back, people are going to be tuning in. It's just about maintaining that same audience throughout. But I'm sure the comeback will be legendary, dare I say.
I hope so, man. I hope so.
All right, let's move on from that. We have about 15 minutes left, a little bit less than that, on Spirit Live. But afterwards, we will move over to our YouTube channel, which we are currently streaming on right now, The Big League, which you can find on YouTube. Just look up The Big League, scroll past a couple of Tom Cochran songs, and click on our channel. We should be live there, and we'll continue the show throughout because we still have to talk sports. But we'll wrap up. We have a few more things to hit with you. I guess we could let's do the Guelph Storm stuff, because I think this is something that not a lot of people realizes. You were a part of game day operations for the Guelph Storm from October 2017 to April 2018. What did you do for them?
Yeah, honestly, I did a lot of stuff for them. It was not the most glamorous job in the whole world, and kind of the one reason I chose the Guelph Storm was my girlfriend at the time went to school in Guelph, so like that was kind of a way that I could justify going out to Guelph every single weekend, because they had games every Friday night. So then I would just like stay the weekend there. I'd usually like hop in Thursday night, skip my class Friday if I had one, and then do the game on Friday night, and then hang out Saturday, Sunday in Guelph and party and hang out. But yeah, so in terms of like the actual work, like it was the game day operation. So like anything that happened, any activations that were going on, if there were contests, if there were, like those stupid little games that they play in intermissions, like it was setting all that stuff out, making sure we got all that worked out. It was, sometimes it was filming the kiss cam, or like filming for like the broadcast sometimes.
Is that fake? Is that fake? The kiss cam?
No, it's not, man. It's actually crazy. I have a funny story. So one time I was doing the kiss cam thing, and it was like super last minute. The person who was filming wasn't there at the time, so like I had to go grab a camera, and I ran up to a spot, and I was like, okay, I see who I'm getting. I've got them. I throw the camera on them. We're ready. It's usually after like 5 minutes left in a specific period or something like that. So like whatever whistle comes after that, they do the kiss cam. And so that happens, but then like that next whistle after whatever point it was a goal. And I was like, oh my God, this could be bad. Like, so I kept holding the camera on them, kept holding the camera on them. I look away, like I'm watching the game for a little bit. All of a sudden they're gone, right? Like I have no idea where these cats went. And so I was like scrambling to go find a new couple to put it on. And I found these two, and it was like, they looked similar in age, but like I could see the mouth on the big screen. They're like, that's my dad or something. And I was like, oh my God. So I got like a little bit of heat for that, but it was kind of jokes. It's a funny story to tell.
That is pretty funny. Yeah.
So uncomfortable and just a worst nightmare.
Yeah, I felt really bad. I went over and said sorry to them before they left, and like I think I got them like, I don't know, like $5 Tim Hortons gift cards or something.
Hey, nice.
Yeah, so it wasn't all bad for them.
So you made up for it and didn't lose any teeth. It's always a positive.
Yeah. It was a really old dude, though. Yeah, it was a really old dude though. So like I don't know how much harm he could have done to me.
Well, that it definitely is a bit of a theme with you in terms of getting in scraps. You can tell where I'm going with this. You do comedy, and your big act is up on your YouTube page. Everyone can go and check it out. It's called Everyone Thinks I'm Gay. It has 151,000 views, which, holy crap.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
It's one of 3 videos on your YouTube channel. The second one, uploaded 5 years ago, I watched the beginning of it, and that was really weird.
Yeah, it was all the other stuff was honestly just like school projects for high school that I just like never deleted from my YouTube channel, just because like I don't know, I have no idea why I haven't deleted them yet. Now you're making me feel bad about myself. I'm gonna have to go delete them right now so no one can see them.
But geez, 911 subscribers and 151,000 views. Why haven't you posted since then?
So like the places that I've done stand up since then, like they're not very keen on having people videotape unless you're kind of like the main act, which I've never been. So like that's pretty much the reason why. And like the videos that I do have are like they're shot super conspicuously. So whoever was shooting them was like you don't even see me, you can't tell it's me, and like the audio is not very good. And usually like the people who are shooting them are my buddies who have been drinking copious amounts of alcohol before going to this event with me. So like that's why I haven't posted it. Like it doesn't mean I haven't been doing the stand up. It's just that like none of the videos, I think, like once you set a standard of the type of video that is posted in like a certain category, you kind of have to hold that up, and I just haven't been able to get that going because of reasons that I can't really control, unfortunately.
So how many sets do you think you've done?
Like different material, or just like getting up on stage and talking regardless of the material?
Just getting up on stage, and you could also tell us how much material you have if you want.
Yeah, I probably have done like in the range of like 30 sets ish since then. A lot of it at the beginning was just like doing that same set that I knew that was going to work pretty much no matter where I was. So like just to get comfortable on stage and like understanding how, like where you put pauses, how you should be delivering certain jokes, and how you should be delivering certain things better at getting into, getting the crowd involved and stuff like that. And in terms of material, like I've got my notebook like literally right beside me, which is like I've turned that into my camera where I literally carried it around with me at all times. Like I've got a notebook full that I don't carry around anymore, and then I've got like my little like yellow notepad that's probably like 100 pages full. A lot of it's like the same jokes over and over again, just kind of like refining them and making them better. But yeah, I probably have, like if I were to do it all back to back and stuff like that, I'd probably have like a solid 45-50 minutes of straight content I could run, but I'm not at that point yet.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
You and Seth need to do a show together.
Yeah, that would be funny. Seth's a funny lad for sure.
Yeah, is there anyone else in the program who does comedy that you know of?
Not that I know of. I don't know.
I think Zach was telling me that he was looking at it. Like I don't think he's done it yet, but I think he was looking at it. At least last year he was.
Zach is a funny guy, so I would watch that.
Yeah, it could. He could be into something like that for sure. I know he's a big like stand-up fan, so.
Okay, yeah.
Well, maybe that's your practicum. You do put on a comedy show with Seth Nevsky.
That actually would be jokes. Maybe I'll
think
put that
about
in the notebook. I'm putting that right now in my notes.
Well, there you go. Credits to the big league for that idea.
That's for sure.
But we have 5 minutes left. Let's save the Sportsnet stuff because you've worked at Sportsnet for 2 summers now. Well, not this past summer, but 2018 and 2019.
Yeah.
We'll touch on that after we switch over just to the YouTube channel. But there is something that I found. It was an article from 2011 from Toronto.com. The title of it is, and depending on your response, I'll know whether or not this is going to be hilarious or not. East York Bulldogs win provincial Pee Wee baseball championship. Is this or is this not your team?
Oh yeah, big time. That's my team. That's hilarious. I didn't even know that was a real article. I have the if we were on video, I have the ring. I could I've got the provincial ring on my desk that I'm sitting at right now.
Nice.
That
Yeah.
is hilarious.
Yeah,
Here, I'll throw the link in the doc for you just so you can look at it. Because we have a Google Doc that we share our notes with. It is at the very top. And tell us which person is you
in the photo?
in the picture.
I'm trying to guess.
I couldn't figure out which
Let
one.
me see which picture this is.
Hunter
there's
was.
a chance. What if he's the guy getting tackled there? Did you hit?
That's what I was
Did you get a walk-off hit?
No, that wasn't me. That was so we had one guy on our team who, like, we're obviously like super young, but the guy was just like an absolute dog. And if this is from like the final game, is this Jesse guy?
Yeah, it looks, Jesse.
Yeah, so he, like, I don't know, it was an early home run, but it was like it put us up like 3-0, so I was pretty fired up. Okay, so going from the very right, I'll tell you which one I am. So there's the one guy on the very right, like the little small guy with the glasses upside down on his head.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other small guy right to the left of him with his socks up high. That's your boy.
That's
really?
you.
The high
That's
socks.
your boy.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I would not have guessed that was you.
Yeah, that's your boy.
That kid looks ginger. That is hilarious. It's so interesting what I find when I'm doing this research. I call it, it's really stalker work, but it's research, in air quotes. But that's hilarious.
So you guys must have had a pretty good team then. So what position did you play by any chance?
When I was that young, I was playing like infield and outfield. Like I was kind of doing everything. Right. But then like as I grew older and like got better and actually like was like a half decent ball player, I started to pitch because I could throw hard and then like play shortstop and third base. So like, yeah. But when I was younger, and I think on this team, I was definitely like, I was like a center fielder. And then if we needed like a good infielder, they'd throw me at second or short or something like that.
Nice.
Well, let's hear about that more after the break, because I want to talk about some of the stuff that you've done playing. But we're pretty much out of time. We have just over a minute left in the show. So for the Spirit Live broadcast, we are moving over to YouTube. You can look up The Big League, scroll past the 2 Tom Cochran songs, and you will find our YouTube channel. Click on it. We will be live streaming there, so you can catch the rest of this interview where we're going to talk about his Sportsnet work, more about the sports that he's played, and then just talk this week's sports with Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But Hunter, thank you for coming on to the Spirit Life broadcast.
Yep.
We are going to take off, but we'll be back in about 30 seconds on YouTube. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week, Wednesday, 3 to 4. Peace. All right, we're off air.
Okay, Hunter, I'm going to send you another Discord link to like our private Big League channel.
All right, sounds good.
Cool.
Once you guys take off from this call, I'm going to just up the volume again in the log me in, and then log out.
Yeah, make sure you log out.
Yeah. All right. So see you in 30 seconds.
All right.
See ya.
All right.
All right, we're still live on YouTube.
Perfect.
Beauty.
Joe Biden's still winning so far.
It's good to hear.
I think he just got Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, you got Wisconsin.
Is that official or is that an unofficial?
I think it was official. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I've seen. I think it was people have given it to him, like ABC, etc.
Yeah, CBS gave it to him as well.
Beauty.
Okay. It's going to be close either way. But yeah, let's continue to talk sports because we're live right now, aren't we?
We're still live, yeah. Conversation keeps going.
Well, hello to everybody who's listening live. Let's see if anyone is actually listening live.
Maybe we got 2?
1, maybe 2. Well, hi. Hopefully this all sounds good. We have no echo issues like we had before in previous episodes. But let's continue talking Hunter. And let's get an idea of the sports you played, because obviously that's a big part of everybody in this program's childhood. I think that's probably pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Maybe not all, because I think there are a couple people who aren't exactly into sports in our program, but either way, you have to follow sports to be in this program. So you mentioned you played baseball. You were a pitcher, infielder, played outfield as a kid. What other sports did you play?
I did hockey a lot as well. So like I was like the winter sport was hockey. Summer sport was baseball. When I was like super young, I did a little bit of soccer and stuff. But then in high school, you play every sport you can if you're allowed to, and so I was kind of doing that as well. So I played ultimate frisbee in high school. I played soccer a little bit in high school, soccer when I was in elementary school. So like pretty much any time I could play a sport, I would. But like my big ones and like the ones that I was like actually somewhat competitive at were definitely baseball and hockey, but more so baseball.
So what levels did you get in each of those sports then?
So hockey, I like the highest level I played at was AAA. Eventually, like I only did that for 1 year because it was like way too much work. And then baseball, I played AAA pretty much like my whole career, I guess, which wasn't much of one, but yeah.
So where did you play hockey and baseball?
So baseball, I kind of like played all over Toronto. Like I played at a bunch of different teams with a bunch of different coaches and stuff. But like the big ones were East York. When I was young, I played there. Like I kind of like grew up there. And then once I got to like the AAA, I went to North Toronto and North York, and then back to East York to round out the career there. And then hockey, same thing. Like it feels like I played for like 100 different teams. So, but like just like GTHL teams based in Toronto, stuff like that. So yeah, a bunch of teams there, a bunch of teams baseball. So nothing too specific.
So were you playing AAA during your draft year?
No. I played it when I was like 11 or something.
Oh,
man.
okay.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah. No, it was not that serious. And then eventually, like as you kind of like went through the years, it was like, all right, all I want to do is play. I just want to play hockey with like the boys, like I just want to get out there, have fun, play with people I know. Like I'm not trying to really take it that serious. I don't want to practice. I just want to play games. So like eventually once I hit, I think it was like grade 11 or something, I ended up just like playing house league and like select because there was no practices, which made it a lot more fun.
Yeah, I find in Oakville too, that's kind of the age group where people just say like, hey, I'm not gonna make the OHL. I'm just gonna go back down to house league and have some fun. And then also like school gets really busy, grade 11 and 12 anyways, so they gotta more chill.
Yeah, exactly. I maintain that house league is one of the best levels of hockey because you actually have fun playing it.
Oh my god, it's like I couldn't believe after like spending so many years like in like rep hockey, it's like what the hell was I doing? Why would I ever do that to myself? Like you literally you get out there, you play X amount of games a week, you don't really have to practice, and when you are practicing, you're like it's basically a scrimmage, right? So like I can't, and by the time you're like grade 11, grade 12, like everyone, the skill level goes way up than when you're in like grade 6, 7, whatever. But yeah, dude, house league, anything is way more fun than rep. just because you don't care.
So you played indoor house league then?
Yeah.
Okay. I recommend to anyone playing hockey to do outdoor house league because
That sounds unreal.
it does get cold. I will fully admit that playing goalie in -30 is not fun. But it is the best time and it is so relaxed. I mean, like, playing house league hockey outdoors for me was so much fun. I played maybe 4 or 5 games indoors in my entire life.
Wow.
That's dope. I play in a men's league right now. When it's winter. I don't know about this year if we're gonna do it, but I play in a men's league that we play outside, like on an outdoor rink, and we just like get the permit for the year, which is, I can echo your statement. It's like it is so much more fun than playing inside.
Are you full gear or are you just shinny?
It's shinny, but like we wear like shin pads under sweatpants and stuff just in case, because like it does kind of get intense. Like it's all like relatively like high skilled older dudes. So like it does kind of get intense. So like you wear the shin pads, the helmet. Like some guys wear shoulder pads, or some guys wear elbow pads. Like because you don't want to fall and break a fucking elbow. Oh, sorry, you don't want to break an elbow.
We're on YouTube now, so it's okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we just try not to swear on
Yeah.
Spirit Live because we don't want to get in trouble or kicked off the network. But now that we're on Spirit or on YouTube, we should be good.
We'll just get
So don't worry
demonetized.
about
No, okay.
We don't make any money off this anyways. We have 16 subscribers, so it's not that big a deal.
Hey, we got Hunter on. He's got 991 on his,
man.
so views are going up.
Yeah, so you got to beat. I think Therese still holds it, right? She's still most viewed.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
see.
so. Yeah, Therese has the most views.
Yeah, she's almost at 100. So
Wow.
that is by far the
for
most
her.
viewed episode we have. But hey, we'll take it. Hunter, that's your goal this week, is trying to beat that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But let's sort of wrap up your discussion. We can talk a bit more about Shinny in a second, because I love talking about Shinny. But let's wrap up with Sportsnet and there's 2, I guess, sort of stints you've done there. We can start with your stuff in 2018, where you were an integrated sales associate as a summer student. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So they have obviously a sales team on on Sportsnet, just like any major network does, just to like sell ads through. But like this particular like division of the sales unit is like all about the integration. So like if you see the like a big example from them would be like, you know how they would have an OT goal in the playoffs or something, or just an OT goal in general, and then it would be called I think it was Subway. It was like the Subway OT winner or something stupid like that. So like that's kind of what they work with. To be honest, I'm like going to be straight up. I did like a whole lot of nothing when I was there, which is okay.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was cool to say that I worked at Sportsnet. And like when I say I did nothing, like I did do stuff, obviously. Like I wasn't actually just like doing nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, in terms of like the whole running of Sportsnet, it was like, yeah, I wasn't doing a whole lot. But the biggest thing with that first year was like making connections and having, you know, a good time and going out and having beers with the guys, or, you know, any of the people working or the other interns and stuff like that. So as much as I like always kind of say that it was you know, a boring experience, it was fun in the sense that I was able to like learn like the back end of like how these productions make money and like how you can actually, what types of things people are looking for in a production. And like I think it did help me with our schooling and like my future, because you always have to think about how much money like you're going to be able to make when it comes to a TV series or a season or an NHL game or the playoffs or this or that. So yeah.
It's really interesting hearing you say that. Like, obviously, you could actually drink in 2018. It was legal for you. We were still a year away from that. But hearing just how big making those connections were, like, you don't have to necessarily give a specific name, But who would you say has been who is your biggest connection that you made through that specific summer? And then I'll ask you the same thing for the next summer.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would say like the biggest connection of that one, and like I don't know. Like this one's hard because there's the connection. So like Scott Moore, for example, like he would be a good connection that I have where like him seeing my face, he knows who I am and stuff like that. And he like we can have a conversation, go into an interview and like it kind of be chummy and stuff like that. And I do think that is a good connection to have and it's a good person to know. But to me, the person who was actually like kind of running the interns at the time of like the Sportsnet integrated sales, like she was kind of looking over us and like making sure we were doing everything all right and stuff. So I'm gonna say her. She doesn't necessarily like she works in the industry now. She moved over to Uninterrupted, which is also like now Scott Moore's the CEO of that. And she actually like she reaches out to me all the time if they have job offerings to check if I'm still in school and stuff, and to see, just like lets me know, oh hey, you should email this person about this to do this if you are interested. So like I will say like her, and not only that, but like she's kind of like now not just a work acquaintance or whatever you want to call it, but like she's also like I'd consider her like a friend. Like we'd go out for drinks and stuff. So definitely Kayla Richardson. I'll like say her name. She works at Uninterrupted right now, so she's got an in there. And yeah, like she's been so helpful with like not even just like professional things or like setting me up with interviews or setting me up with certain things, like everything, like how to manage being a person who is working, or like how to manage working full time, how to make sure that you're like keeping healthy and stuff like that on times when you're really, really busy. So like she's been a big influence on me in that sense. So she's definitely the biggest connection I have from there.
So what would you say was your biggest takeaway then from 2018?
From then it was definitely just like make sure you can get an in. Like if it's not something that you see yourself doing, like make sure you're doing stuff. Like make sure you're doing stuff that can get you to a position where you can have the decision to go to what you want to do, whether it's in the same company or not. Like you always kind of have to not always be on the lookout for a new job if you don't like what you're doing, but always make sure that the people have very good, like they know who you are and they have a good like not necessarily a good memory with you, but like they have a good idea of who you are and what you are and what you bring to the table, and just like make sure that you work hard and show your face and do this and that, because then eventually like you'll get noticed for one, and B, like you'll have the right people notice you, I think is kind of the biggest thing I took away from that.
All right, now let's talk about your 2019 summer, where you were an assignment editor. What did that sort of entail on your end?
Yeah, so this one was more a production based thing, which I met the people from my 2018 experience, and they ended up connecting me to this guy Billy Duke, who needed an intern for the playoffs and for like the hockey playoffs and basketball and stuff like that. So basically it's pretty like mundane stuff if you really think about it, but it's like so crucial. So basically what I would do every day, I'd show up at 4 p.m. This was like in a time where like the Jays were playing every night kind of thing. There was hockey playoffs going on. There was basketball playoffs going on. And you basically just had the people who were out there, they would get their, like if they were on the road, they'd use they'd bring a DeGiro with them. They'd film all the stuff. They'd get the DeGiro. They'd send through the filing there. Basically had to go through, mark down what shots were taken, what stuff, like, so the producer would send through, like, say the producer of the Jays game, they're like, okay, this is the first time Vlad's playing at I don't know, whatever the Twin Stadium is or something like that. First time he's ever playing there. Let's show him warming up. So you try to find parts of him warming up. You make an in and out of where it is, get the clip, send it out, send it to the producer. They have to expect that it's going to be a good clip. Then there's, the pregame interviews here. Let's talk to Lourdes Gurriel Jr. You basically have to make sure it's a good interview, kind of take down the talking points. You don't have to like necessarily transcribe it word for word, but make sure that you have what you're talking about so that the producer or the director can look at it and say, okay, well, here's our storyline going into this game. Let's talk here where he's talking about him on a hot streak right now. That's what we want to go into, before his first at bat. Let's show that clip. So it's a lot of that. Same thing with post game. You just kind of go through the videos of the interviews and look at things here and there and kind of troubleshoot any issues or talk to other networks and see if you can get certain interviews with certain people. And then eventually, like near the end of it, I ended up being like a runner for Blue Jays Central for like 5-6 games, which was pretty dope.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So I guess it was a bit of it was like a combination of editing work and grunt work. And by the end of it, you mentioned you were doing like running work. So I'll ask the same question. Who is the biggest connection that you made out of that work? And then if you want to just continue on, you can continue with what was one of your biggest takeaways?
Yeah, I think the biggest connection that I had with that is like probably the Hazel Mays and the like Jamie Campbell's of the world, right? Like since with the running and being so connected with like the actual like production and stuff, and like talking to them and having conversations with them, like they were really helpful in terms of like, hey, if you want to be on air, you got to do certain things. You got to do this, and this. And like, not even necessarily that they like helped me per se, like in a personal way or like set up anything. It was just more like giving me tips and letting me know that like the track that I'm on is acceptable. You know what I mean? Like Jamie Campbell was telling me, like first time I met him, he was like, yeah, well, I was a runner for some Hockey Night in Canada show for like 2 weeks and now I'm here. And I was like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of dope. Now I can see my path going the same way. And then like same thing with Hazel May. She was like, here's what I did for a little bit. And then I did this and then I did this and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then eventually here I am as like the Jays main reporter. So like that kind of stuff was really cool. And I guess like the same thing for the takeaways is just like show your face, work hard, kind of don't say no to something as long as it's, if you're in the field that you want to be in, kind of like making sacrifices and doing something that you might not think is going in the right direction at the time is always going to be a good thing, just because you're going to have that experience. B, you're going to understand what that person who does it after you is going to be going through. And then C, it's just like, more about what it takes to really put everything together and how integral literally every single thing in a broadcast is. Like if one thing doesn't happen, even like the smallest little detail, it could really screw up an entire broadcast. And like you might have 4 hours to do it, but if you don't do it in that 4 hours, like you could be screwed.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you see yourself working at Sportsnet like in the future, like full time? Is that something that you're aiming towards? Do you think that, I know it's, COVID quarantine right now, but do you see yourself going back to Sportsnet, anytime soon?
It's possible. I mean, I really like the idea of something a little less cookie cutter than like a Sportsnet or a TSN, just because while that's obviously like the backbone of sports entertainment, sports media, like I like the idea of doing something like a Bleacher Report, right? Like all those kind of content creators on Bleacher Report, I think is really dope. Or like Complex or something like that, where not that they're necessarily smaller than a Sportsnet or TSN, but it's more you have like a creative freedom that I don't think you necessarily have with Sportsnet.
Not right away, at least.
Exactly, yeah, and like it's a lot more difficult to really kind of pitch yourself as this guy who does something different when you have to always be, hey, I'm so-and-so doing, and it's Sportsnet Central. Let's talk about these highlights. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that, rather than, hey, let's get creative. Let's do a show about music and basketball. Let's do a show about music and something else. And like, I think that's probably where I'd rather see myself, just because of that creative freedom of not kind of creating the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again.
It's really interesting to hear someone who's worked at Sportsnet a couple times and in various roles sort of talk about Sportsnet and everything along those lines in that way. Has your internship at Studio 71 sort of influenced you either way? You started that back in April.
Yeah, a little bit. Like, it has literally nothing to do with sports, in the slightest bit, but it is like a production company first and foremost, and then as it has kind of grown in Canada, its sales team is getting bigger, and its talent management team is getting bigger and stuff like that, and like there's more opportunities present for something along, for growth as you kind of move forward. So like, I'm still working there now as I'm in school, which is like a little bit difficult to really get as much out of it as you want. But yeah, I do think that, it has kind of shown me that you should strive. And like, when I say you should, I mean, like, I'm talking to myself here. Like, you should strive for something that isn't so like, so not easy per se, but like, that's so cookie cutter and that's so, the exact same every time, and like, try to do something that maybe is a little bit different than the typical like Sportsnet or TSN.
It's really interesting. We've had how many people on who have worked at non-sports affiliated internships? It was Hunter one, I think Joseph as well, correct, Aiden?
Yeah, I think so. And then what did Luke? Did Luke do something? I don't know if it was an internship. Golf course, right?
Luke is a runner at Sportsnet.
Right. But I think he's done something else. Yeah, Joseph. There must have been some other people earlier on we had on.
Yeah, well, either way, it's interesting to hear somebody talk about not working in a sport media organization,
exactly,
I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I think we've been talking about sort of all your stuff for a while, and we do need to get into the other sports, as there's political stuff breaking now as well. But let's finish it up, then I'll mention the political news that's breaking. But we'll wrap it up with our final question that we always ask people. And that is, what have been your 3 biggest takeaways from working in the sport media industry and Ryerson? And what would be your 3 pieces of advice for somebody looking to get into the industry?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from like working in the industry and like being in Ryerson Sport Media is like how important it is to put yourself out there and like do stuff you're not comfortable with, because you'll learn to like it and get comfortable with it. Another thing would be like, be meticulous, right? Like, learn how to really be kind of like a jerk about how good specific things are, because you are putting your name behind a production, and like, especially if it's live, you have to really be like, it has to be your best work on that live show. And if you're not meticulous with the details and you're not going through things perfectly, like, something's going to go wrong. And then I guess like lastly, for a takeaway, it would be, you're just kind of supposed to have fun. Like, school is supposed to be fun. And I didn't really know that until coming to Ryerson. So, if you're not in school for something that, not even that something that you love, but like something that you're passionate about, or something that like you enjoy and that makes you happy, and like you can hang out with the people that you're doing your school with, I think that's like the most important thing. And like, I guess my 3 pieces of advice would be all that, right? Like, put yourself out there, have fun, and don't take yourself too seriously, even though you do need to be like, you need to be meticulous, you need to be very detail oriented, but like, in the end, like, what's the worst thing that can happen on a on a school assignment, right? Like you're gonna get like, especially if you do it, you're not gonna fail. That's kind of like in our program, especially, right? Like if you do the assignment and it's not like a total, shit show, then you should be fine, and no one's gonna remember it after next week because they also have to do their show.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you say that because I don't fall into that category at all. But yeah, it was a really interesting conversation in terms of your experiences and what you've learned from working in various places in the industry and building your own websites and having actual organizations reach out to you about joining them. It's really interesting, and you're very.
And it's crazy how this all happened in like 10 days. If you hadn't applied to the program, like it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, it would be. I'd be totally in a different direction, man. It would be crazy.
Yeah.
It's definitely really cool to see everybody in our program sort of growing and creating these connections and getting into the industry and watching them flourish when you know that they're really good at what they do, like you. And yeah, it's what I enjoy about these conversations, is hearing just about everybody's paths and their stories. But we'll move on and we'll touch on the one bit of political news that I wanted to bring up, because this is breaking basically the second. CNN and NBC are projecting Joe Biden to win Michigan.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That is crazy.
That's big.
So
he just needs Nevada, or is that in yet?
I am not sure. I think Nevada are trying to get the votes done today. From the sounds of it, they were, I think, initially going to hopefully go until do it tomorrow, but instead today are going to aim to do it today. But
yeah, I think the latest that they said would be like early tomorrow morning, that it would be, all the voting stuff would be done by. But
yeah, 86% done. Hold on, 97% done in Michigan. ABC doesn't have it finalized, but CNN does.
CNN and NBC both have it projected to Biden, but there are, as I'm reading this tweet from NBC's Steve Patterson, large animated crush of Stop the Count protesters trying to push their way into TCF Hall in Detroit, where ballots are being counted.
This is gonna be so scary.
Yeah.
I can't even believe it. It's just gonna be gonna be such a scary scheme. Just seeing how the discourse is on Twitter and social medias and stuff, between Trump fans and Biden fans, is just I can't even believe that this is a real election. It feels like we're in the 30s, man. I can't even, it's wild.
Yeah, has there ever been an election this close before? Do we know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Bush,
there definitely has.
Was it Bush and what's his name?
Bush Gore, I think, was
Bush Gore. Yes, thank you.
Tight. They had to recount a bunch of ballots.
They had to recount Florida, and it came down to whoever won Florida, and it was by literal 4 digits.
Wow, that's crazy.
Votes. Yeah, it was incredibly tight.
Yeah,
but it looked like it was going to be just a Trump runaway last night, but today the mail-in ballots have started to pull him back. So we'll see whether or not he pushes this in court, which he definitely will, and how successful that is. But this isn't ending anytime soon, to put this lightly. But the path is looking better and better, let's say, for Biden to somehow... I shouldn't even be somehow. It should be just to pull this off. But with the U.S. right now, you have to say somehow, because that country is interesting, to say the least. I'll leave it at that. But let's talk about another interesting situation. And it's interesting in the same way as the election is interesting, in that it all sucks. We touched on it last week with Luke, the Mitchell Miller situation. I didn't think we said enough about it. I didn't think we did a good enough job talking about what this...
We didn't really know too much information as well.
No, I should have had more research in there. I should have had more information in our doc, but I didn't, and I thought we should do a better job of it. So basically, I run through what sort of came out, what we know. Basically, Mitchell Miller bullied black mentally challenged or developmentally challenged classmate for years. It culminated with a court case when Miller and I believe his name was Isaiah Meyer Crothers were 14 years old, following a horrific, it's the only way you can describe it, act that Miller and a fellow classmate did, which resulted in them being charged in juvenile court because it was all captured on security footage and security video. But basically, other things that we sort of found out afterwards, he'd issued an apology letter to all 31 NHL teams. He has yet to do that, apart from the court-ordered one to Isaiah. And Arizona initially did not have him on their draft board. According to The Athletic, John Chayka didn't have him on their draft board. And somehow he ended up back on there. And the Coyotes had literally bragged a few weeks earlier about their CEO being on the anti-bullying committee in the NHL, and then they take this psycho. But how do I want to approach this? Let's start with the Dangle podcast, because I think we're going to bring that up a couple times on this show. I don't know if Hunter, you listened to it, or if Aiden, you caught the episode. But basically, they brought up something that I think was an unbelievably big point, and that's pretty much gone ignored. And the way I put it is, how on God's green earth did his parents not reprimand him in an unbelievable way? How did the parents of Mitchell Miller not pull him from hockey and just punish him to no end? I can't get over the fact that he was still allowed to play hockey, that the only punishment that we know he faced was this court-ordered mandate. It's shocking to me. I would never do this. I was the one who would have been targeted because I don't try to make fun of people. But I don't know if either of you want to speak on how your families would have reacted to you doing something like this, and how you never would have left your basement ever again. But
jeez.
Yeah, it would have been bad, that's for sure. Like I can't believe it. Like, as the story grows and stuff, it's just like even more and more wild, like, to even like just hear this stuff, and it's just like so disheartening. You know what I mean? Like, you're right, the parents should have done stuff, the family should have done stuff, everyone involved like should have been doing more stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it's a little bit tough to comment on it. Like, I'm not really one to put down anyone and like, you know, speak negatively on someone's family. But yeah, I mean, if it was my family, like, I'd get in some serious trouble. But no, I don't want to put anyone down really. But then again, you know, it's just awful what he did, and like Hunter was saying, you know, it's just getting worse now. So I don't know if this is fixable on Miller's part. I don't think there's anything, you know, he can do. You know, nobody's gonna forgive him for what he did. I don't know how Arizona even found his name if he wasn't on their draft board, but still gets drafted in, and they knew the stuff that he did. It just doesn't make sense to me. And, you know, thank God, you know, it seems like he is getting punished. So it's long overdue. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky. I can't really comment on it too much. It's a tricky situation.
I look at it this way. There are two 14-year-olds who are involved in this incident. One's been forgiven, one hasn't. Mitchell Miller if he'd treated this like a human being with actual emotions and morals, could have been, he was projected to be a top 50 pick if it weren't for this situation and if it weren't for how terrible of a human being he was. And one of the kids got forgiven, the other one didn't. It's as simple as that. Was he young? Yes, of course he was. Can people change? Yes, of course he was. I had this all in the doc. The thing is, did he change? And the SDP, they love to say this. Where are the receipts? And right now, there are no receipts. This guy's walking out with more product.
Yeah.
It's shameful. And, the University of North Dakota did the right thing. They said he's not on his hockey team anymore, or on their hockey team anymore. And while it took a little while for them to do that, which is also wrong,
but
they did the right thing in the end.
Can he still attend the school, though?
I think potentially. But what came out, I believe last week, was that he has a contract with a KHL team.
Yeah, I saw that.
So that doesn't tell you what the KHL is like. I don't know what does. They employ Slava Voinov. They employ Bill Peters, I believe, as well. And yeah, Bill Peters is the one who used the racial slur, correct?
Yeah.
I'm not making that up? Yeah. Bill Peters, and now they employ Mitchell Miller. So that league is something else. It is clearly doesn't care about who people are. Let's put it that way. But unless either of you have anything you want to add to that, let's quickly fire through some of the signings that happened over the past few days. Everything's sort of slowing down a little bit, but there are still some decent names out there, Mike Hoffman being one of them. But two names that were taken off one that was obviously going to be taken off, and Joey Anderson. He signed a 3-year, $750,000 per deal with the Leafs. The first 2 years are two-way, and the last year, I guess, is one-way. But the big thing is he will still be an RFA when the deal ends. Hunter, I don't know if you know who this kid is, but he was the guy who the Leafs got in exchange for Andreas Johnsson from the New Jersey Devils. And I don't know, Aiden, do you have anything you really want to say about this deal?
I think it could be a steal, honestly. I could see Anderson, he's not going to crack the roster next year, but you could probably look at him on the roster the year after as either a third or fourth line player. The Leafs are still going to be dealing with a bunch of cap problems. That's not going to stop anytime soon. And to get a guy, at $750K, who I think is a good depth forward. He's probably their 13th, 14th guy right now. So, I think it's a pretty good deal. I think people are underestimating him, and I like how he has the defensive upside to him. And I think that's kind of what the Leafs need, penalty kill, a bit grittier, good on the forecheck. I think he's going to be a key piece moving forward, and to get him at that price, it's really good for Dubas.
Couldn't agree more. I've seen a lot of people saying this could be a steal for the Leafs and a very good deal for the future, and it's very cheap for 3 years for a guy who at worst will be an AHL player. So I love it. Another Leafs signing, Michael Hutchinson, agreed to a 2-year, $725K deal. He will be the fourth goalie, I think it's safe to say. But basically the reason they signed him is Aaron Dell has to go through waivers if he gets sent down. So if he does get claimed, they have Hutchinson as a potential third goalie, and he is a potential he will be exposed in the Vegas expansion draft, which that's the only reason this deal was signed.
Yeah.
I like Hutchinson. I should just say that to begin with because he played with my cousin, but
and he's a good goalie.
I think Ed Ayers does it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. Hey, well, he was Colorado's number 1 goalie in the playoffs. No, still the dead air. Still the dead air.
Yeah.
He was the three.
I'm sorry, Michael. I'm sorry, Michael. If you're listening, I'm trying to do something here, but
look, he's.
I met Michael Hutchison, by the way. I've met the guy. He's a good guy.
I'm sure he's a fantastic guy. Just like I'm not saying anything bad about him. It's just skills on the ice might be a little bit different.
Look, you have to be a good player to play in the NHL.
Of course.
Yeah.
Obviously. So you can't really insult him too much. It's just he's not a starter or a backup.
No.
He's an AHL guy. And that's what he's signed to be. So this should be perfect. He's a fourth goalie. And if your fourth goalie is Michael Hutchinson, who would be a fairly decent third goalie, you're in a good spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other signings. This broke, I guess, yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. Dominic Cahoon is signing a 1-year, $950,000 deal with the Edmonton Oilers. After the contract, he will be an RFA because for some reason the Buffalo Sabres didn't give him a qualifying offer.
Yeah, I like the signing. I like the signing for the Oilers. I think Cahoon played pretty well on the Penguins last year before getting traded to Buffalo. But then as soon as you get traded to Buffalo, your stats go down and everything. You start playing bad. But I think, the Penguins gave him a shot playing with Evgeny Malkin, and he did pretty good with him. So I think, the Oilers, they got McDavid, Draisaitl, or they could put them both together. But I think if you put Cahoon with one of those guys, he's going to put up some points. And, I don't see him being on the power play at all, but maybe they try him out on the penalty kill. And I mean, $950K is a great price, so you can't really be mad about the deal when it's that low that you're paying him.
Yeah, and also you're looking at Edmonton, who is they're just as bad with the cap as the Leafs are in a lot of senses. So getting a guy who kind of the same thing with a Joe Anderson, even though Anderson is a little bit younger. It kind of feels like the same type of signing, right? The guy's not going to make or break your team, and he's not going to really necessarily he's not going to put Edmonton over the edge by any stretch, but he gets them, hopefully for their sake, closer to that finish line of what they eventually want their team to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Fully agree. Couldn't have put it better myself. I love the signing for Edmonton. I think perfect option bottom six. You can play up in your top six as well. He's just one of those guys you can play anywhere in the lineup, and I like it. And he's not even that old. So, yeah, no issues with it. Another signing that broke this past week, Anthony Mantha signing a 4-year, $5.7 million per deal with the Detroit Red Wings. Decent number.
Yeah.
I think it's a little high.
Yeah, I was going to say it is a little bit high, but Mantha's still pretty young, and I think was he injured last year for a bit of last season? I think he might have been. So it is tough to say. If I was Detroit, maybe you give him 3 years at a bit, maybe under $5 million. I think 5.7 is a little bit much, but it's Detroit, and Detroit can do it because they have a lot of cap space to work with. And
if something's good, you probably, when you're Detroit, you want to keep that good thing, right?
Exactly.
I would say Mantha's one of 3 or 4 guys that are net positives on the team, and you kind of got to keep that around just to be a little bit respectable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was nearly a point a game last year on Detroit.
In my opinion, and I don't know what your guys' opinions are, but I don't think Mantha's ever going to be a first line forward. I think he'll be the second line guy.
Yeah,
I think he could be a first line complementary player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
Either way, he's a great second liner. He's an okay first liner. And again, Detroit don't have to worry about the cap.
No.
I look at where they're forwards right now that can play first line. Dylan Larkin, yes.
That's
Tyler Bertuzzi? Tyler Bertuzzi? Maybe.
You could make the argument that Larkin's not a first line player as well.
Yeah, so he's your first line guy. You're paying him 5.7 per for 4 seasons. He'll be 30 by the time the contract expires. He'll probably be a good guy in the locker room for your young players, whether it be the Philip Zadinas or whoever, Joe Valeno. Why did I call him Joseph? Joe Valeno, Evgeny Svechnikov. He'll be a good role model for them. I like the signing. I think it'll work out for them. But another signing that broke today, which is a very interesting one, Ryan Pulock signed with the Islanders on 2 years, $5 million per. What do you think of the number, first of all?
I think it's pretty
Second
good.
of all, they have $3.9 million in cap space right now. They have a pretty notable RFA, Matthew Barzal. Where do they find the money?
Well, you got to trade someone. First of all, the contract. I think I like the contract. I think $5 million for Pulock. He's a right-handed defenseman, and 2 years, like that's a good length on the contract as well. So I think it's a pretty good deal. But if you're the Islanders, if you're Lou Lamoriello, why are you signing this guy right now when you have Barzal? I think Barzal needs to be the priority. You have to sign him, get his number first before you make any other moves, because now, they're $5 million in debt, I guess, by signing Pulock. They don't have as much to sign Barzal. I don't know if, Connor, do you have their roster? I'm not sure who they can trade, but they got to find some guys to get out of town because they need to sign Matt Barzal. Like, they don't want to turn this into a William Nylander situation. They want to get it done ASAP because I think he is the top RFA still on the market right now.
I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is still on RFA, but I have their roster up here now. Johnny Boychuk is getting paid $6 million for the next 2 seasons.
That's going to be tough to get rid of, though. Like, maybe buy him out.
Well, I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw it today, like, they can get to $6 million in cap space by going with like a 20-man roster and maybe waiving a player or two. But yeah, they're going to have to make some sort of move because right now they have no money. Hunter, do you have anything you want to add to this?
It's like the cap with the NHL is so, like, you have to be so careful when doing all this stuff, and like moving any player can ruin a good team or good chemistry and stuff like that. Like, I think making the signing before you even got to Barzal, like, you're just like playing with fire. You know what I mean? Like, no matter what happens, like, you're just playing with fire, and you're gonna have to get yourself out of that situation, obviously, before you can even think about signing your best player. And that's not a good position, I think, to be in as a organization.
So they have $5 million cap space right now, according to Cap Friendly. I think a guy they should probably move on from, and I know he's an assistant, but Cal Clutterbuck. He's getting paid $3.5 million to play on the fourth line. That's got to be a contract you got to look at moving, I think.
But then you run into the same issue as Johnny Boychuk, where you need to find someone who will take that contract. And also, I think that $5 million in cap space includes overage. So that's them going over the cap. So you have like X amount of money. Right now, their projected cap space is 3.9.
Yeah,
which I think is a bit more accurate for the Islanders. But
even like Andrew Ladd, like, I don't know if anybody's willing to take on. Oh, and he has a no trade clause too. That's oh man, they're in a real pickle here. Maybe they. Oh, geez, even in goalie, like, Varlamov's good. They don't have Grace anymore, so they can't really fall back on their backup. They have Ilya Sorokin making $2 million. Wow,
he's going to be very good, though.
I don't know what they're going to do. He's projected to
be one of the next big things.
Maybe they move on from Leddy or something. There's got to be something they do.
Josh Bailey could also get dealt. You just got to find someone to take the money. That's the big issue for them right now, is finding someone who will take the money. And maybe a team like Columbus, who just had Gustav Nyquist announced to be out for 5 to 6 months following shoulder surgery, could be a team to take on one of your forwards to sort of fill that need that they have this season. And they have a lot of cap space and $12 million. But they do have to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois. So they probably have about 3 to 4, if I had to guess what his contract will be.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. The entire NHL, there's going to be a lot of ponds to fall that need to happen before next season. It's this very similar situation in a lot of leagues where we don't really know what's going to happen. There are now rumors that they may not be able to go next season until February. But we don't really know. We're just sort of sitting in the dark. But let's move on and let's talk about another sport that neither of you can talk about. In rugby. Yes, we're talking about rugby, or bi-yearly at this point discussion on rugby. Why are we talking about rugby? Unfortunately, it's not a good reason. If you're a Toronto Wolfpack fan. Basically, because the Wolfpack, let's jump back a little bit. Let's explain the initial situation, because I think that's pretty important to understanding what is happening in the rugby league. Basically, Toronto Wolfpack didn't play this season because of COVID. It wasn't economically feasible for them to play games in England away from Toronto with no ticket revenue and no revenue at all. So they didn't play this season. And as a part of I guess it's the CBA, it's sort of like the agreement you have to sign when you join the league. If you don't play this season, the owner needs to sell the team, and there needs to be a vote on whether or not they can stay in the league. In the top tier league, which is what they're in now, although they were doing pretty terrible. So that vote happened on the 2nd, which was, 2 days ago? So on Monday. And unfortunately, it ended up going 9-4 against the Wolfpack being allowed back into rugby league. Leeds, Catalans, St. Helens, and the RFL were the 4 to vote in favor of them coming back to the league. But basically what this means is if the Toronto Wolfpack want to continue, and if they want to continue in the rugby league and the RFL, they need to start from ground zero. So the 4th tier and work their way back up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is devastating.
Yeah. They are apparently reassessing and deciding what they're going to do with their future. But it wouldn't shock me to see them fold. Because there's now a second team in Toronto, the Toronto Arrows, who play rugby union, I believe, which in my opinion is the better rugby, but that's besides the point. So they need to decide whether or not they want to go through the process of winning each league again and getting back up to the top league in England.
Right.
And with COVID, the financial situation and strain that has put on the Wolfpack, I don't know if that's feasible, personally. So that might be the end of the Wolfpack.
Jeez.
That's tough.
Yeah,
That's tough.
It's a really unfortunate situation. Do either of you have any sort of thoughts on this sort of situation? I know neither of you really follow rugby league, and I follow it very from a distance.
But I think it's just obviously, I mean, it's very just disappointing, you know, a team from our area who has obviously proven themselves on a very high level of rugby, and for them to just not have a team anymore, that's pretty crazy. Like, even if I'm not a fan of the Wolfpack, like imagine, you know, TFC did this, if the Jays, like it'd be devastating. Like, there are those die-hard Wolfpack fans who are very disappointed right now, so I can't really imagine what they're going through. I hope for the best, and I don't know what they're gonna do, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's wild because like everything you'd heard about the team was like all positive. Oh, they're the best. They're this. They're that. They're gonna be up in the Super League and stuff like that. Like, and then for all of a sudden, for it to just like come crashing down like that, it sucks to see, especially when it, like you said, Aiden, like when it's a Toronto sports team, whether you necessarily watch it or not, or enjoy the team or like them or not, like it still sucks.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see what the Wolfpack decide to do because they still have supporters here. I don't know if either of you have been to a game, but they're fun to go to. It's fun to watch. I've been to one. Highly recommend it. But yeah, it's sad. Like I'll tell a bit of a story in terms of my experience with the Wolfpack, and basically my gym teacher, one of my gym teachers in high school, he used to play for the team that was the team before the Wolfpack. He was a player manager. And so he had the connections to all these people. And I went to his final game before he retired, and he managed when I was in grade, I think it was 10 or 11. He brought in the coach, it might have just been three coaches to sort of teach us how to play rugby. I played when I was 13 and 14. I played sevens. So I had a bit of experience, but it was really interesting to meet them, and they were really nice. Clearly very knowledgeable. They do it professionally. But it sucks because it was a new sport in Canada. It's a sport I think could be incredibly successful in Canada. And it's a sport I enjoy watching a lot. It's nonstop action for 40 minutes and then 40 minutes again.
And it's extremely popular, like in high school too. Like, because in high school sports, like there's really like football, baseball. There's a lot of sports, but rugby is a very popular sport in high school. So I think that's where most of the interest draws from, and that's kind of what those high school kids look towards if they want to pursue a career in rugby, the Wolfpack, and now that team is gone, so it must really suck for them.
Yeah, especially as a new franchise. But we'll move on from that, and we'll talk about another contact sport before we get into basketball, because Hunter knows basketball better than most people, I would say. And we'll also touch on the MLB, but let's start with the NFL. And we'll start with what broke as we were recording, and something that will devastate Aiden.
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford is on the reserve/COVID list now.
Yeah. I've been looking at it. I think there's still a chance that he plays against the Vikings, they're saying. But he's in isolation. Remember in the summer when we thought he had COVID, but it was actually a negative test that he got. So that was scary back then. This is even more scary because it is confirmed he does have it. So, it sucks. It sucks for the Lions. It sucks being a Lions fan, guys. Like it's really hard. I think with Stafford now, and if he doesn't play, I think if he misses a game, our season's over. Like I think at this point in the season, every game is a must-win for us, and if we don't have our star guy, then it's going to be really tough for us to win games.
Yeah, it's another COVID case in the NFL, which just continue to pile up constantly.
Yeah, I think the 49ers had to shut down their facility yesterday too. They have an outbreak, so yeah, it's not looking good, but there hasn't been too many game postponements yet. I think there's been like 2 or 3.
Yeah, and that was just like right at the beginning too, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was at least an entertaining week in the NFL. I say that when there were no big names traded on the deadline.
Nothing.
And basically the biggest news was Sam Darnold is the starting quarterback of the New York Jets.
For the future. Yeah. That's a big one. I don't know first of all, that can't be right. Like, there's no way that's actually going to happen. If the Jets finish dead last this year, there's no way they pass on Trevor Lawrence.
Who says he puts in for the draft?
Yeah, right. He's not confirmed. You're 100% right about that. He hasn't declared for the draft yet, but if he does, like, how could you pass on him? You can't pass on him.
If you're Trevor Lawrence and the Jets are going to finish last, do you still put in for the draft, or do you finish your education, have a backup plan, and maybe have a chance of getting drafted by a different team next season?
I think
that's
you
so
gotta,
insulting, man.
Yeah, like I think you gotta, because what are the chances the Jets are gonna be last place again next year? Like, what if you like? It's not like a really solid organization is going to fall, like, barring like a major catastrophic injury or something. Like, they're not going to fall from the top to the bottom, or, you know, what if there's a team that already has an established quarterback? What if, you know, God forbid he gets injured? What if this happens or that? Like, I don't know. Like, if your goal really is to be in the NFL, like, I think you should just figure it out while you're there. You know what I mean? Like, get into the NFL and then figure your stuff out while you're there.
Yeah, also, like, no matter what team you get drafted to, like, it's an honor no matter what. And I know the Jets are in a really bad situation, and this year 0-7, it's pathetic. But get rid of your coach, because he's awful. That'll make you better instantly for next year. And also, like, you're playing in New York. That's a pretty cool city to play in. And
yeah, being the quarterback for a New York football team would be,
it's not the worst.
Wouldn't be a bad situation to be in. Like, you're not living in, like, not that Denver's bad, but, like, you're not living in Denver, you know what I'm saying, or Pittsburgh or something, right? Like, you're living in New York.
Yeah.
Or Cleveland, right? Like, you're living in New York, like that. You're in a good spot in life if you're the number one quarterback for a New York football team.
And also a guy like Trevor Lawrence, like, with his skill level and talent, like, I'm sure he's confident that he can go into the Jets organization and turn it around himself. Like, he's got to be that confident. And, you know, he might think that, okay, we don't have the best guys around me right now, but when I do get there, I will help improve these guys. They will hopefully get a new coach, get some better players, and we can build something. So even though they're bad this year, I think the future is a lot brighter if you have Lawrence as your quarterback than Sam Darnold. And I don't know why they would even put that out there right now, the Jets. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And if they do mean that, then they're just stupid. Like, Sam Darnold is not your quarterback for the future.
It's a very interesting situation. And maybe it's like a bluff, and they're just trying to give Sam Darnold some confidence.
Yeah, maybe.
Not fall on his face. But it's very...
Yeah, I have no reason into it. I don't know why they would say that. No idea.
Maybe they're just backing their guys. I have no idea. But I do want to hear, obviously it's not going to be the New York Jets unless you're insane. Who are your post-deadline Super Bowl predictions?
Ooh, like the matchup?
Yeah, matchup.
Like, right now, I want to say Seahawks Chiefs, because that seems like the sexy pick. But I want to see the Bills make a Super Bowl. So, like, that'll be my, like, dark horse.
Are you a Bills fan?
Not particularly, no, but I would like to see the Bills in the Super Bowl, because that would be quite fun. Yeah, and then, like, the Seahawks, just because, like, they're just such a good, like, they're just such a good all-around team, and, like, Russell Wilson versus Pat Mahomes in a Super Bowl would be, like, that would just be a treat to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to go against the Seahawks and Wilson. He's putting up an MVP caliber season, and I don't really see it slowing down. So yeah, I'll go Seahawks as well. But in the AFC, I'm not going to go with the Chiefs. I'll go with the Steelers. I think Roethlisberger has one more magical run left in him, and and then the Chiefs will just take over for the next 10 years or whatever. But I could see Mike Tomlin putting up a good game plan against them in the AFC Championship game. And the Steelers have a great team. They're undefeated. They're the only undefeated team left. And it would be really cool to see Claypool, the Canadian, play in the Super Bowl as well, and hopefully put up a big game. So yeah, I'll go with Seahawks Steelers. I think that's like a rematch from the early 2000s. I'd like to say so.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
We took all the good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't follow football, which is an issue. But I've heard the Seahawks are good. I've heard the Bills are good. I've also heard the Falcons suck, and
the Falcons do suck. Yes.
Yeah, the guys on my MLS podcast complain about them endlessly, so I know they are terrible.
The Detroit Lions. I don't know if you heard this, Connor, but the Detroit Lions beat the Falcons 2 weeks ago, and Todd Gurley could have ended the game for the Falcons and given them the win by not scoring a touchdown. All he had to do was just not cross the end zone, and they would have won. But the guy scored the touchdown and gave the Lions a chance to win. The Lions were still down by, I think, 5 points with like a minute to go. But they gave the ball right back to Stafford, and he gets a touchdown with like no time remaining on the clock, and the Lions win, even though Gurley could have ended the game like a minute before.
I think I did hear about that.
Yeah.
It's almost as good as I can't get over this. The 4-bar college field goal. I don't know if either of you saw that.
Yeah.
That was nuts.
That
entire weekend was nuts. That was was the same night as the baseball.
Yeah, Randy Rosarena.
However that ended.
Brett Phillips.
Yeah. But it's nuts. The NFL is nuts. The MLB is nuts. NBA is nuts. Everything is nuts. But let's talk about the MLB, and then we'll finish with the NBA because I want to have a bit of a discussion around the Toronto Raptors. But MLB, basically, quickly fire through this. Hyunjin Ryu named as a finalist for the AL Cy Young, and somehow, I don't understand it, Charlie Montoyo was named a finalist as the AL Manager of the Year.
Dog, that's the craziest thing I've seen like in a long time. I know like award stuff isn't that serious, but like, come on, man, are you nuts?
Yeah, that was my first reaction to like, is this a joke? Like, pardon me, like what? Because Montoyo's made some really bad decisions, and like I'm not a fan of his lineup decisions or bringing in pitchers and replacement stuff like that. But you got to look at why he is considered a finalist for the Manager of the Year. I think it's just solely because he took a very young Toronto Blue Jays team who finished, I think, 4th in the AL last season, bumped them up to above the Red Sox, and got them into the playoffs. I think that's literally the only reason as to why. Like, he took a team that young into the playoffs and made them competitive and made them fun to watch. I think that's the only reason why he would get Manager of the Year. But I don't think he's going to win. Kevin Cash is the obvious choice, in my opinion, even though he made the worst decision of his life in Game 6 of the World Series. But that doesn't come into play. I think Kevin Cash should get the Manager of the Year. Hunter, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I don't think Montoyo actually has a chance. I just think that they needed that third guy to throw in there, and like and I get what you're saying. Where like, yeah, the young team kind of, I wouldn't even say they overperformed expectations. Like, that's kind of what people expected of this team. Like, they had the best prospect in baseball over the past few years, and he underperformed in like Vlad Jr., but their pitching staff got better this year. Like, not necessarily over from what it was when it was in like 2016, 17, 18, but like it did get better this year with some of the signings, and their bullpen had its moments. And I think like you got over performances from certain guys because it was a shortened season, and like you're not going to see a guy like Gurriel or Teoscar Hernandez, I don't think, at least like do as well as they did this year, just because this was just like a hot couple months for those guys. And they didn't have that chance to slump. Whereas like a Vlad, in that sense, like he pretty much slumped like all season long, except for, you know, a couple weeks here and there or a couple games even.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I don't necessarily like the storyline that they took a young team to like overperform, because like we figured out last year that these are some of the best young players. Like they're not a Fernando Tatis or anything like that, but these are some of the best young players in the league. And like the expectation for them this year was to be competitive for a playoff spot. So it's not like they overperformed like crazy, but they definitely did better than what they did last year. So I guess that's a big reason for it. But
yeah, the MLB is just taking the NHL motto for manager of the year and saying, wow, this team was supposed to do badly and they actually did well. Here are the managers of the year. And that's how I think Charlie Montoyo somehow managed to get into that conversation. But another bit of news, you just mentioned it, Hunter, Fernando Tatis Jr. Was, as Aiden put it, snubbed of MVP.
So
and
snubbed of a finalist. Yeah, and Shane Bieber as well. Like two of the best guys in my, like, first of all, I think it was Mookie Betts, someone else, and Machado, who were the final.
It was Machado, Freeman, and Mookie Betts.
Yeah, so I definitely think like Betts and Freeman
and Betts definitely deserve to be on there.
Yeah, but then I think I would personally take Tatis over Machado. Like, he was phenomenal, and I know some of his more outstanding performances were in the playoffs, so maybe that does tie into my opinion on it, because he was really good then. But I mean, this guy's definitely going to win an MVP before his career's over, but I think it could have been this year. And then Shane Bieber as well. Like, he had a very good season on the Indians, and if you remember, the Indians, like a couple of years ago, they got rid of all of their guys, and Bieber's like the only one left, and he single-handedly kind of, you know, made that rotation good again, because they traded away Mike Clevenger, who was their second guy in the rotation. It was literally just Bieber, and he's literally one of the only reasons why they got into the playoffs, and they did well this year. So I think Bieber is definitely a stronger MVP candidate than his teammate, Jose Ramirez. I know he did have a good season as well, but I think Bieber should have gotten a shot at a finalist as well.
Yeah, I agree with the Bieber pick. I'm not sure I totally agree with the Tatis pick, only because like, if you extended the season into like 162 games, which obviously it wasn't, it was 60 or whatever it was. I think Machado, like, he was hitting 300, and then if you extend his RBIs numbers, like, he's almost at 130 RBIs, and then he's gonna be like up there in home runs, right? Like 40 plus home runs and 130 RBIs. Like, if you have that no matter what, and you're one of the best defensive players in the league at your position, like, you kind of got to be up there. And like, obviously, like, Tatis, that's not like taking anything away from him, because he is also, like, how young he is. I think voters were also like, yeah, let's give him his chance another year, because we know that he's going to be in that conversation. And like, his average stats weren't as good, and he didn't, like, he had a lot of home runs and RBIs and stuff, but ultimately, like, the batting average, I think, is probably the difference, right? Like, it's a 30-point difference. So like, that would be the biggest thing, like, in my eyes, that separates Machado from Tatis.
That was a good argument. I think you might have changed my mind.
Tatis also showed emotion during the season, so that automatically rules him out of anything, because you're not allowed to show emotion when you play baseball.
Yeah, you're right.
But that's the fun, everything to do with baseball, which isn't fun at all, because baseball just doesn't make sense anymore, if we're being completely honest. But let's move on to our final sport of the day, and then we'll let Hunter take off.
Hold on.
Basketball.
Trevor Bauer might be signing with the Jays.
I forgot the Trevor Bauer.
That's all we need. We really need to say. Just put out a tweet hinting at it. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Would be a good pitching duo, him and
And
Hyunjin Ryu.
I don't like the personality that he brings to the table.
Oh, he sucks.
Yeah.
He's such a bad human being. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'd be upset if the Jays signed him just because, like, I hate him. And, like,
it's like Strowman, right? But it's worse.
I love Strowman. I love Strowman. I like Strowman so much more than this lad. But, like, I don't know. I just, like, the bad taste in my mouth whenever I think about whatever series that was.
Yeah, I know, right?
When he was like he was hopping on Twitter just yapping away. It's like, all right, buddy,
he had
relax.
Like the drone incident. He had a bloody finger.
Yeah, and it's like he wasn't good at the time, so you could like really kind of like talk bad about him. But now anything you say, it's like, all right, well, this guy is one of the best pitchers in the league. So so obviously it'd be a nice addition, but man, I hate that guy.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you.
Well, they needed to fill that hole that Strowman filled in the locker room, so maybe this is the guy. But unless they do it with actual Strowman, because I believe he's a free agent this summer as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Well, you never know. You got to have that one guy
freak
who's pushing the locker room.
I
guess. I don't know. Maybe you don't. We'll see what the Jays do. They're an interesting situation, to say the least. They're in not a similar situation as the Raptors, but they kind of are at the same sense. I wanted to talk about this because I thought it was very interesting, but we'll mention first Sham's tweet he put out as I open it. So the New Orleans Pelicans are openly discussing star Drew Holiday in trade talks, and several contending teams are pursuing him. Who do you think the teams are that are pursuing Drew Holiday, Hunter? And do you think that Toronto Raptors are one of them?
Wait, hold on. I have a question to Hunter first. Why do you think the Pelicans are trying to get rid of him, first of all? Because I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but, like, isn't this guy, like, couldn't he be a key part to their future core?
Yeah, I mean, like, he is a good player, don't get me wrong. And, like, I think the reason they're trading him is because he doesn't fit the timeline of like Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, and like he's not old per se, right? I think he's like 28 or 29 or something, but you know, by the time like Zion and all those pieces that they get together eventually really do like hit their stride, like Drew Holiday is probably going to be closer to the end of his contract, or if not, he'll have to have a new contract signed by then. And at his age, you're going to probably look to be getting your last final, you know, $25-30 million contract that you won't be getting once you hit 33, 34, unless you're LeBron or something, right? So like, I think at this point in the Pelicans' mind, they're saying, all right, well, let's get someone who we can build up towards that final spot of where we want to be, and let's spend our money on a guy who's going to be in their prime with Zion, rather than spend our money on a guy who's going to be in their prime and make us good, you know, make us a little bit better right now, but like not necessarily going to be a key part of our playoff pushes and hopefully like championship pushes in 5, 6, 7 years when Zion is more mature and more developed and is like a smarter basketball player and stuff like that. Because obviously everything with that organization is going to be all about Zion. And so if you don't fit that bill to help him, then you're gone or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that a potential Raptors trade surrounding Fred VanVleet could happen?
I hope not. I think that right now, like the Raptors have groomed VanVleet so well to kind of be that like second Kyle Lowry. Like Fred VanVleet, like he's not necessarily super young either, but he's younger than a Drew Holiday. And like the big thing that everyone says about Drew Holiday is that he is a really good defender, but he can also put up like 20 and 5. Like Fred VanVleet can do the same thing. And arguably, I think Fred VanVleet's not necessarily a better defender as a whole, but like he does exactly what you need him to be. He's not as long, he's not as big, but he's just as strong. He can move just as fast. Like, he's deceptively fast. He can move the ball probably better, I would say, than Drew Holiday, and he's a better shooter. He can create his own shot. He can create shots for others. Like, I think Drew Holiday, like, everyone has kind of been saying that he's like criminally underrated, and I think that has kind of made him very overrated for what he is. And I think that kind of means that they're going to get a good offer for sure from somebody, whether it's a contender or a team that just wants to get a somewhat of a star player.
So what do you think the Toronto Raptors should do this offseason then?
For right now, I think you just kind of have to stick it out, right? With what you have. Like, don't make any big moves. Don't trade anybody. Obviously, like, it wasn't an ideal way to end the season, but you're still one of the best defenses in the league, and you have a player hopefully in like a Siakam and in an OG Anunoby and a Van Vliet and a Norm Powell and stuff like that. Like, that can get better and should get better. And I think the main thing you should be worrying about as the Raptors is re-sign Freddie and try to get Serge Ibaka back on a cheap-ish deal where he can, if he really loves Toronto, take a couple $1 million pay cut, and we'll make sure you get paid off the court. We'll make sure that our sponsors and stuff like that use you in our advertising and stuff. Like, I think the biggest thing is just keep the team around, because the way that you're going to attract a free agent in 2021 is by being competitive, right? Like, you saw that with the Clippers, with them being a competitive team, taking Golden State to 6 games, and then Kawhi and Paul George. I mean, Paul George got traded there, but like, they both said, yeah, we want to be on this team because like the culture's good. And you see the Miami Heat, like, yeah, they kind of weren't the best team before Jimmy Butler came, but they were a hardworking team with a good culture, a good competitive nature to them, and ended up being where Jimmy Butler wanted to go, like in a sign and trade after with Philly. So just like be competitive, and with a president of basketball operations and GM and like Masai and Bobby Webster, like kind of like the sky's the limit, and you can really make deals with anybody. And in this day and age in the NBA, you can literally trade any contract, anybody, any person to any team, and you can free up space, or you can take on contracts, you can do whatever. And I think, like, keep it as it is right now and figure it out next year, because you need to be good again. Like, you can't just be a mediocre team and then automatically expect to sign one of the best free agents out there.
So what do you think Toronto should do for their center position now that Marc Gasol has gone to Spain? Do you think they should sign someone, or do you think that Chris Boucher should fill that hole?
It depends on what the market looks like. Like this year, there's not going to be a whole lot of big names that you can really sign, and there's not going to be a huge market for centers because the free agency class isn't all that good. But there's ones here and there that could potentially be good fits. But I think you stick with Serge Ibaka at the center, and if you can run Chris Boucher or Pascal Siakam in a small ball lineup out there, even like a Rondé Hollis Jefferson, like playing the 4, or Stanley Johnson playing the 4, you're probably in a half decent position. But I wouldn't really worry myself on their center position until you fully sign Fred VanVleet back and make sure that Serge Ibaka comes back to the team as well.
So you think that they should re-sign basically everyone who's becoming free agents in Rondé, Serge, and Fred?
Yeah, like I don't see why. To be honest, I don't see why you wouldn't, just because Fred is going to be your point guard of the future, and even if he's not necessarily going to be a all-star in 3-4 years when Kyle Lowry's done his career, or when Kyle Lowry's coming off the bench or whatever, but he is going to be a guy who is like probably one of the better point guards in the league, and he's a really good game manager. And when you're learning behind Kyle Lowry, you're going to be just like a good player. You're going to be a smart player. In terms of Serge Ibaka, like I think after what his contract was with the Raptors and how they gave him the benefit of the doubt on his last contract. He will hopefully be inclined, and like the fact that he won championship, like hopefully he's inclined to say, yeah, all right, I'll take a bit of a pay cut here to stay in this situation because I really like it here. And he did have kind of a bit of a career year last year in terms of like his offensive production, but I think the only reason for that is because of the system that he was playing in and like the shots that he was getting from a Pascal or a Kyle Lowry or Fred VanVleet. So like sign those guys back, even if it's for a cheap 1-year deal, because like I said, you can move anybody at any time, really.
Interesting. And we'll close it with this. Looking forward to next offseason. Will Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Toronto Raptors in 2021 happen?
Man, it's hard to say, obviously. I know, like, I think if he does leave, the two biggest candidates are going to be Miami and Toronto. To me, I don't see Giannis as a guy who will go to a team that has beat him in the playoffs. So like if a Miami wins against him again next year in the playoffs and Jimmy Butler can beat him, like I think that takes Miami totally out of contention. Like same thing with Toronto. If Toronto beats him again in the playoffs, which I think is a little bit more far-fetched than Miami, but I think he won't really even consider it. But I do think that the Masai Ujiri, and like I said, with how consistent they've been and how good, it's so hard to not see the Raptors as an attractive option. So I will say he's going to be a Toronto Raptor in 2021.
Wow.
Well,
you heard it here first. Yeah. All right, we will close out this podcast with something we forgot to warn you about, but you have some hot takes already, so you should fit right in. And it's our final segment called Hot Takes, where each of us give a hot take that is 99.9% of the time wrong. And yeah, that's about it. I think the only one we've gotten right is Aiden's firing Babcock in 2 weeks back when it happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had some very hot takes recently.
Luke
last week was wow. What he predicted, Ottawa would make the playoffs and Calgary wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's bold.
Yeah.
I've been trying to think of some ones to top that, but it's tough.
I think that's the hottest take we've ever had on this show because, wow.
All right, Hunter, here you go. You're up.
Yeah. We'll throw you to the wolves. No.
Yeah.
Connor, do you have one? Or who should go first?
I don't have one, but I can try to come up with one.
Hunter, do you have one?
Yeah, I got one. I can think of one. So I was actually talking with my buddies about this the other day. I don't think the Brooklyn Nets with KD and Kyrie are going to make it out of the first round of the playoffs.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, is that considered a hot take, or is
I think that is. No, that's a good hot take. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd consider that a hot take.
Good.
Which makes a lot of sense. I could also see that. Personalities clashing and a first-time head coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Huh.
I like that. That's one of those hot takes which are they're not quite Ghost Pepper level, but they're still pretty hot.
Where do you think they would finish in the standings next year?
I think they're going to be like mid-level, like 4, 5, 6 area, because the East is so good up top. I don't like the Bucks are going to be number one. They always play hard, like every regular season game. And then, finishing out from there is going to be some combination of Raptors, Boston, and Philly, and the Heat, right? Like they're going to be in there. Yeah. And then I think Brooklyn's going to be in the mix. But with like KD coming back off the injuries and Kyrie coming back off injuries and new head coach and kind of a whole new team, like I think they're going to have some ridiculous games. Like they're probably going to put up like, both of them are going to put up 40 pieces, like left, right, and center. But I don't know. I think they're just not going to be consistent enough to end up in a good spot. And then their first round matchup is going to be tough. And any of those, 5-4 matchups, 3-6, like they can usually go either way. when the top of a conference is like that loaded. So yeah, I think they can get knocked out pretty quickly.
All right, that's a hot take.
Yeah.
Aiden, do you have one? Because I have one.
Yeah, I do have one. I'm not. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I think Mikko Lehtinen gonna win the Calder next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hunter, do you know who that is?
Like kind of. I know the name. I'm not like super familiar with.
He's a left-handed defenseman coming over from the KHL. He's joining the Leafs.
Right.
Yeah.
If he's a Leaf, he's not winning the.
Hey,
He's
Matthews
also stuck
won it.
behind. He's stuck behind Jake Muzzin and Morgan Riley. So that is a very hot take.
Yeah.
Because you're calling a third pairing defenseman.
I'm just hoping for power play time. He's gonna take over Riley's spot on the first line power play, and yeah, he's just gonna go off. I think the Leafs fans are very underestimating him right now. But yeah, Calder Trophy is a big hot take. But yeah, I don't know. It's a hot take for a reason.
Yep. And my hot take this week is sticking with the hockey theme. We mentioned his name a little earlier in the show. Mike Hoffman. I predict that he will be a KHL player this season.
Wow. Okay, that's a good one too.
That isn't fully out of nowhere. Sean Simpson, who works for TSN, has theorized or has said that the highest monetary offer that he has right now is from a KHL team.
Okay.
So that is my hot take. But with that, we've reached the end of this podcast.
It's been a long one.
It has been a long one. How long have we been streaming for?
2.5 hours.
Yeah. So Hunter, thank you for joining us for 2.5 hours in the middle of a very busy week.
Of course.
But we will link all of his stuff down below, apart from maybe the fan-sided stuff. But we'll link a bunch of his stuff down below. It'll all be there. His Twitter, Instagram, photography, Instagram, his website, YouTube channel where you can check out his stand-up, which is at 151,000 views, which is insane. You can check out, all that down below. Thank you for coming on. God, I can't speak all of a sudden. Thank you for coming on, Hunter. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you to the 7 viewers who were watching throughout the 2.5 hours.
Yes, thank you to all of you. But we'll be back next week on Spirit Live starting at 3 o'clock or maybe 3:10, give or take 10 minutes. But we'll be on this YouTube channel so you can check it out. Like this podcast, share this podcast, comment on this podcast. If you're listening to this on a podcast specific website, rate it. We really appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at CWG Somerville. Follow Hunter on Twitter and Instagram at
Twitter H_Surphlis, on Instagram at A Bathing Hunter.
And Aiden?
At Aiden Silliphant on both. I'm still working on the Twitter. I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna get into it or not, but I'll see.
I'd say wait until the election over because it is not a fun place right now.
That's true.
But yeah, we will see if we have a president by our next episode. We don't know though. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.